Hello, what's Forest Focus? Nottingham Forest are through to the fourth round of the FA Cup after a 3-2 win at Blackpool after a very unnecessary extra time. They'll face Bristol City in the next round. Winning was probably about the only thing that went right tonight. We'll unpack some injuries and a few other bits and then discuss the Brentford game very briefly in the company of, first of all, Mark Sutherns. Mark, good evening. You all right?
Good evening. Yeah, a bit later than expected, but maybe I should have expected it to be this late, to be honest. It's Forest, isn't it? But yeah, I'm all good.
It was very, very Forest to be totally in control of the game. And now we're sat here having narrowly avoided penalties, but something we'll discuss in a minute, surely, as well. And retaining his place from yesterday is Pete Blackburn. Pete, how you doing?
Okay, a little bit harrowed by the events of the evening, but yeah, all right.
Yeah, well, why don't you kick us off, Pete? Just give us your overall thoughts and we'll branch out from there.
Overall thoughts, I guess a sort of sense of relief when it comes to the game and getting the win in the end, but that relief is tempered pretty significantly by the state of the injury list, what that might look like after the game. Hopefully some of those were worse than they appeared at first sight, but that is a big old worry now. On the game itself, as you said, sort of seemed like we were cruising when Danilo scored the second. And I'm not sure why I complacently thought that it was all going to be nice and easy from there. And I was texting people about bringing on the youngsters and seeing what they can do and all that sort of stuff. But obviously that wasn't to be. And a bit of a classic case of multiple errors from Forest players for their goals, as we seem to sort of collude together to do. So yeah, a bit of a worrying game all in all, and a bit of a stressful one. But we've obviously escaped with the win, so I guess that's something to hang on to.
250 with us already, which is great. Let me just thank a couple of new members, William Thompson, Floyd Ferris, and Vanilla Swingers. I think I've obliged myself to say all the names, so there you go. Yeah, welcome aboard, shall we say. Right, I suppose, Mark, I mean, I think beyond the game, the biggest takeaway is the injuries and where it leaves us. Is that you were worried before the game? I mean, it's only amplified now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there were some positives. I think Dominguez was excellent. Omobame Dele was solid, I thought. Was okay. He defended well enough and he looked comfortable on the ball. Aguilera, can he do it on a cold night in Lancashire? Yes, he can. So, and he might need to do it at Brentford, I imagine, at the weekend as well. So he was a positive when he came on. I thought he showed a lot of composure on the ball and he actually helped us in extra time get control of it again. The negatives are not only the injuries, I think, but also the blueprint that we've just handed Thomas Frank on how to beat us, which is high balls, set pieces. We don't have a centre-back who can dominate and we don't have a goalkeeper who can be a presence. And unfortunately, I think that could be a problem against a Brentford side who are very well equipped to exploit that. So that's the negative for me, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just on the injuries, who's saying in the comment? Oh, Terence is saying Gibbs-White will be fine for Brentford. Yeah, I mean, he does have a knack of coming back early from injuries, so we'll wait and see on that. I know they said a week or two, but hopefully he's all right. Hudson-Odoi hobbled off. Elanga, we're thinking, is out for maybe another month or so. We don't know that, but I think that's the feeling around the club. Danilo's hobbling around. Both centre-halves went off injured. So, yeah, that is a concern. We'll talk about that more tomorrow, probably. I'll probably come back to it as well tonight. But I wanted to get your take, Pete, on the goalkeeper situation. I said after the last game that, Vlachodimos hadn't answered the goalkeeper conundrum. I mean, for me, I think he has tonight, because ending up behind your line trying to save a shot is, more than a slight red flag. What has it got to be turning out for coming back in for you?
Yeah, I think, it sort of crystallised the view that I had when we did the pod yesterday. That was, it's not a pretty position to be in with these two goalkeepers trying to balance what they're both offering on the pitch, which does, is mostly errors rather than the sort of positive things that we're trying to counter with each of them. For me, Vlachodimos just doesn't appear to have any sort of influence on the game when he's in goal. Like you say, it's absolutely absurd. He was essentially in the net when the ball went in, and it just sort of reminds me of that the goal I mentioned on the pod yesterday, where he's just sort of tied to his near post. It just seems like this is happening to him a lot, where he just doesn't have any impact on the moment of play leading up to the goal. So for me, Turner has to play, because we've seen that he can make pretty sharp saves. He obviously has errors in him, and that's a real problem with the quality he's got with the ball at his feet, or lack of quality. But of the two, he's shown that he can make good saves and in big moments. And I think he's shown a bit of something about himself as well, that he came back from big errors to make big saves, which is a tick in his one for me. So as far as I'm concerned, that is a bit of a no-brainer at this point, and Turner has to play.
It's pretty desperate, Mark, that I came away from the Man U game thinking we can't pick the goalkeeper because he's got a fundamental flaw, and now I'm, feeling we've got to pick him. It's a pretty desperate state of affairs, isn't it? Really.
I don't know. I'm not quite in the same camp as Pete there. I think for me tonight, although he went missing, he was a non-entity on the goal. Just retreat into the net. What you want to see there is your keeper at least make himself big and putting off the attacker. It was an open goal. It shouldn't have been an open goal because we have a goalkeeper, but it felt like an open goal. All he had to do was get on target, because he just wasn't going to affect that goal at all, because he just retreated. I don't think Turner would have done any better, because it's the kind of situation that Turner shied away from as well. We haven't got goalkeepers who put their body on the line to stop the goals. I don't think either of them would. But the difference between them is Vlachodimos today, on an icy, bobbly pitch, at least looked like every time the ball went back to him, he wasn't going to skew it up in the air or skew it to an opposing player. And for me, that just about gives him the edge, because I don't think there's much in it otherwise. Yeah, Turner has made saves, and it's a mystery as to why Vlachodimos just seems to be out of the equation when shots go in on target. He nearly saved the first goal. He got a hand to it. He nearly was a factor in that goal, but I don't know. I think Nuno's made his selection tonight, and I think that'll be the case at Brentford. But I fear for us, because I don't think either of them are going to be equipped to deal with probably what Brentford are going to throw us at the weekend, because I think it's inevitable. Thomas Frank's going to watch that. He's not silly, and he's going to say, well, without the craft of Mbeumo, without the craft of Wissa, but with Tony, a factor at set pieces and a presence up front to trouble the centre halves, there's going to be an air raid, I imagine, at times. And I don't think the keeper's going to be enough to get us through it, and I don't think we're going to have two centre backs who can deal with it either. And funnily, I think we'd be better off playing McKenna at the weekend, because I actually think we need that dominant aerial presence to deal with what we're going to get, thrown at us.
What, McKenna in a 3 or McKenna in a 2?
I don't know if Nuno's going to go back to a 3. He may have to play anyway because of fitness, but if it was a choice between him and Worrell, I think because of his strength in the air, I would play McKenna.
I would as well. Normally, I'd like Worrell more because he's right-footed to balance out with Murillo. But we'll have to wait and see on injuries from Omobamidele and Murillo. What did you make of Omobamidele, Pete? Obviously, he scored a goal, which is always a bonus. But in terms of defensive play and work on the ball, what was your take on him?
I'd say pretty good. He looked pretty composed. I'd say both him and Murillo in the early stages of the game, they were under a lot of pressure. Blackpool were pressing pretty high and with quite a lot of aggression, I thought. Both looked like they could handle the ball. I don't think they were sort of flapping at all. There was a couple of moments in the first half where Omobamidele looked slightly hesitant under a high ball, which was maybe a very minor concern. But I thought he did a good job, and at the other end of the pitch, he took his goal really nicely. So I'd say promising, really. And perhaps it says more about the options at the moment, but based on that performance, if he's fit, I think he stays in the team.
I should say Omobamidele, as Sam Matterface was saying. I should have known it was going to be a bad night when I turned the TV on. That was the first voice I heard. But there you go. What about Murillo and Omobamidele, Mark? But as a pairing, because Murillo, I love him, but he hasn't covered himself in glory defensively tonight for either goal, has he?
I thought he started the game well. I thought the first half an hour he was really strong and he wasn't making any mistakes. He was getting in front of his striker every time. He was using his strength really well. He was taking care of the ball. And then, it did go askew a bit. And he definitely was at fault for the first goal, no doubt. His defensive header wasn't good enough. And we've seen it before. He's not consistent when dealing with aerial balls, is he? Sometimes he looks dominant enough and he makes good defensive headers. Other times he just mistimes his jump and doesn't clear the box of the ball. And that's what happened on the goal. He is what you expect, though. He's a young centre-back learning his trade in a Premier League side. So he's going to make mistakes. I I'm not going to be critical of him for that, because we're going to get that with a player of that age and that level of experience. He was still a presence. He was still an important player for us on the night. I think Danilo had a funny game again. I thought he was appalling first half, and then he can't seem to put two halves of football together. Danilo, he seems to have second half. He looked much more composed, took more care of the ball. Yeah, I mean, Jessica's right. I thought he was terrible in the first half. I thought he was better in the second. And then, he just is so inconsistent. But again, what do you expect? We're going to get that out of a young player, again, learning to be a Premier League midfielder or be a midfielder in the Premier League side.
I suppose one of the other big worries, Pete, and we'll come on to the positives, but it does feel very Forest. In both ties, we've been in control for so much of it. At one point, Blackpool had 2 shots and scored 2 goals in both games. The Cosmos did save one at the end, but that's a worrying thing, isn't it? To be in total control and then just, let your opponents who are respectfully inferior to you, to let them back into a game like that is a concern.
It's absolutely a concern. I mean, I think there's still this feeling of sort of fragility around us, where even when we're sort of looking a bit more confident and things are going in our favour, it feels like it's not going to take an awful lot for things to turn pretty quickly. I think you can look across the pitch and see why there might be reasons for that. There's obviously there's a fair few young players and players who've come from leagues that are very different to the English leagues. This is a team, as it often is with Forest, that hasn't played an awful lot of football together. Clearly, there's been a recent managerial change, and confidence isn't great because we're not in a particularly brilliant position in the table. There's lots of reasons for that, but it does feel like there's a sort of a fragility around us still at the moment. And I mean, that's not going to improve if the injuries keep piling up like they are, because as you see when you look at the bench today, there's not an awful lot of competition there. And it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, I think, sometimes when you feel a bit fragile. I'm sure it is the case that when a mistake is made, that sort of snowballs, and I think the players are going to feel that way. I mean, we've definitely seen a lot of progress in the league games under Nuno, and I'm hopeful that we can sort of move away from that feeling that there might be a bit of chaos around the corner. I guess you probably didn't feel that way in those games against Manchester United and Newcastle so much. But it's still lingering, isn't it? And I mean, I think it's just it's a matter of working with the players for a bit longer, and hopefully that we sort of lose that sense of fragility.
Before we'll come on to the positives next, just the one last thing, Mark, without Gibbs-White and then Hudson-Odoi wasn't, without Elanga, Hudson-Odoi goes off injured without having a particularly good game on the night. No Origi. We look, very short up front at the moment, don't we?
Yeah, Wood was isolated for most of the game. It was back to what we saw under Cooper for Chris Wood. He had to fight with scraps, and when he did win the ball, there was not enough support around him for it to be effective for us. I thought we had the most joy for our pressing game. Obviously, when we put them under pressure in the first half, technically we had better players on the pitch, so they're not going to be resistant to that press, and that won us a lot of ball high up and did give us opportunities to create, but we didn't create too much, and the goal was from a set piece. But we looked very comfortable when the second goal went in. That was from the press, obviously. But yeah, we didn't offer a lot from open play other than that. It was that pressure, it was the transition, it was the set piece. But outside of that, we didn't create too much at all. And that's because we just don't have the quality on the pitch at the moment because of the injuries.
620 people with us, which is fantastic. I'll give a quick plug for our sponsors as ever, the Trent Navigation. Appreciate their support. So do get down there if you can on a match day. I'll put a graphic up quickly. It's a bit late for a Sunday roast, but they do good Sunday roasts. So there you go. If you can get down for one of those. Team selection was interesting, Pete, wasn't it? I mean, Omobamidele, it means, he's here for the season now, unless we loan him back to Norwich, which feels unlikely. So that was big news. And also Mangala starting with a bit of a cloud over him in terms of will he go? That was interesting as well. And what did you make of Mangala tonight?
I think he did a fine job. I mean, first half particularly, when we were looking good, he was at the centre of a lot of that. I thought there was a few quite nice interceptions in getting us on the move fairly quickly. And I like it when he's quite not so much direct, but when there's a sort of tempo to the way he gets us up the pitch, sometimes I think he can sort of linger a little bit. But I thought he did that really well in the first half, and he was sort of at the heart of a lot of what we did well defensively, and then moving into attack. I'm not sure if it's a reflection on him at all that things sort of went awry in the second half, but I think in that first half he showed a lot of the reasons why I'd be sort of slightly reticent to see him go, especially given the state of the injury list now. So yeah, I mean, I was certainly surprised to see him on the pitch, that's for sure. With all the rumours, and particularly the source of those rumours. But yeah, I thought he had a pretty good game overall.
Yeah, a couple of people giving praise to him, and that clearance off the line was big at the end. I thought he was decent, especially first half. What about Tavares, Mark? It's interesting that he was picked. I said to Pete before the match, I wonder if that's because he's attacking and we lack an attacking threat. Is he going to be a different option? He looked quite bright first half, but then he just worries me. And he put some good corners in. But there's so many aspects of his game that concern me. Could you start him at Brentford over Toffolo or not?
Oh, I don't know. I think defensively, he doesn't take care of the ball enough. He lost the ball in a couple of situations where, against better opposition, we'd have been punished, I think. So he got away with a few careless errors. I think for me, it was like, this is a level where you can afford to play Tavares and gamble on his attacking instincts, perhaps getting us something. He's defensively low. He's vulnerable, isn't he? And if he's on the pitch on Saturday, Brentford will go after that, I think. So that would be a worry for me. I'd play Toffolo for sure. Much more secure. He keeps care of the ball a lot more. Perhaps doesn't offer as much raw pace and strength going forward, but I think he has that a little bit more quality in the final third when he's on the ball. But the corners were good. I've got to give him credit for that. Let's face it, we've been scratching around for decent corners all season, and we got a couple tonight, including one that we scored from. And that, I think that looked like it was off the training ground, that corner, because it looked like Omobamidele held his run back, and obviously we sucked the defence in and got the flick on from Yates, and there he was on the far post. That looked like a training ground goal, and perhaps the first fruit from our set piece coach, do you reckon?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it helps having someone putting good balls in, but yeah, maybe. Yeah, no, it was decent. The midfield was interesting, Pete, in general. Like we discussed, Danilo, Ryan Yates got man of the match, and I thought he was decent. He got a bit of hate on Twitter. I saw Paz here in the comments saying he thought he was rubbish, but he got 2 assists, and his passing was quite progressive. He just had that negative hand in the first goal where he should have done better, perhaps. What was your take on him?
I've got almost nothing negative to say about him, apart from I do feel like he probably put Murillo in a slightly sticky situation for that goal. But other than that, I mean, let's face it, we've all been here before. The reality is that Ryan Yates, as a Forest player, just gets this sort of stuff all the time for whatever reason. He's obviously not necessarily the sort of prettiest footballer or the most aesthetically pleasing. There's lots of stuff that he can't do, but I don't really understand why we focus on that sort of stuff so much when there's so much that he can do and so much that he brings to the team. I think his leadership is pretty clear to see. The energy that he brings to the team is pretty clear to see. He wins the ball in good places, and I think he's increasingly using the ball well and getting forward quickly to players who can do stuff that he can't do. And I don't really know what more we want than that, to be honest. I mean, I think there's a case that he doesn't make our best starting 11 if we've got all the players available, but we haven't. And as things stand, I can't see a Forest team without him in it at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah, a few people in the comments, backing up that he played well. Andy, Jessica, I saw a few others saying that. And Dominguez as well, Mark. I mean, there was the pressing from Yates and Dominguez for that second goal. He feels like maybe our most important player at the moment with no Gibbs-White, because he does take up decent pockets of space. And if we are going to create, Dominguez feels like he's at the heart of our good work now.
Yeah, he's got everything, I think. He's got the work rate. He's got the ability to win possession, but he's also got a bit of craft when he's got the ball. So, you know, for me, he's a very important player, and he's also quite versatile. He can play in the holding role, or he can play in a more attacking wide role as he did tonight. He's just he's running, right. He's got an appetite for the game like Yates has, but a lot more quality, I would say. So I think that Dominguez is a very important player to us at the moment, because he does seem quite resilient as well. He takes knocks and bangs, but he's running to the end, and he doesn't look, touch wood, he doesn't look like he's a player who's going to pick up injuries. So considering the work rate he puts in and the situations he puts his body in during a match, it's good that he's resilient too. So, and he can finish. We've seen that too. He's taken opportunities that come his way in matches. So he's not wasteful when he gets chances. I think it'd be great to see him get in the box a bit more and get on the end of things. But other than that, I think he's been a real success for us and a really important player, as will Yates be against Brentford.
Yeah, he and Chris Wood, massive. I mean, Wood scored again. What about Aguilera, Pete? Because it was such a terrible pitch. It looked like it was being cleared of landmines before kickoff, basically. It was awful, but he's run the ball out quite a few times. He's looked composed. He's not played Premier League football, and it's hard to judge from just a very short appearance. But say we needed him to start if Hudson-Odoi is out. What would you think about that at Brentford?
I mean, on Aguilera, I feel like I'm an absolute sucker for a story like his. I'm desperate for him to do well when he came on, but I thought he showed, as well as his quality. I mean, he's clearly got a lovely left foot and a real good sense of vision about him, and he looks like he could be a goal threat as well, which is nice because I don't think we've got an awful lot of those on the pitch most of the time. But he showed a real maturity as well, I thought, apart from giving away a sort of slightly iffy foul towards the end of the game when we could have done without it. He defended really well. He looked like he was sort of really fitted into the organisation of the team. Certainly no questions about his work rate. And for a guy who's pretty sort of slight, I really didn't think that we sort of lost anything with him being out there. And he certainly added a lot as well to our play going forward. I thought really promising. I mean, obviously this is a very different level and different occasion to what we're going to be facing against Brentford at the weekend. So I think it's unlikely that he's going to be sort of starting in the Premier League anytime soon. But I think he deserves time to be around the first team, certainly on the bench and making an appearance if we need a difference maker, because frankly, we've not got many around at the moment. And I mean, he's earned a shot, I think.
How important is the win, Mark? Not just for getting through the competition, but if we'd lost that game, having been 2-0 up and cruising, the knock-on effect of that could have been damaging. I imagine Nuno's pretty pissed off still, even though we've won, but it would have been, a big setback if we'd blown that, wouldn't it? Yeah,
I mean, as well as the injury, the physical injuries, it's the mental setback of losing that game and been 2-0 up would have been, would have put us in a bad spot again against Brentford at the weekend. As it is, I think that it's a positive. We'll travel back through to the next round, and hopefully some of those injuries clear up. I think the way we approached the game tonight was a positive as well. It would have been easy for us to kind of retreat back, try and soak up a bit of pressure and try and catch them on the break. But instead of that, Nuno clearly went, we're going to impose ourselves on the game. We're going to press and we're going to get control of it from the off. The crowd weren't even a factor at all in that first half, and we looked really comfortable going in at half-time 1-0 up. And then when the second goal went in, I've got to admit, I watched the game standing up in front of my TV. And when the second goal went in, I sat back on the sofa. I thought, I'll make a cup of tea and relax because we'll just see out the last half an hour. And obviously, probably my fault that we then retreated back to what we saw and conceded the 2 goals. So, I don't know. I think that was a positive. I think under Cooper, we've seen away from home, we've been very meek, very negative, and Nuno put out a team with an approach that was a bit more positive. It was, but like we are the better side. We're going to show that. We're going to press them because they won't have the same quality on the ball that we've got. We're going to take 1 or 2 touch passes. We're not going to be slow with our progression. That was good as well. So I like that because we saw last night, West Ham went to Bristol City, didn't fancy it at all. And I don't think we can say that of Forest tonight. I think we went there with an outlook like, no, we're going to show that we're the better side and we're going to take this win and go through to the next round. And it was just unfortunate that our frailties were exposed, because otherwise I think if we'd have just seen out the game, if we'd have perhaps had 1 or 2 defenders available, I think we'd have seen that out 2-0. Perhaps we had a keeper that was a bit more imposing and a bit more kind of like a factor on cross balls. We'd have just comfortably won that 2-0. But the frailties that Pete mentioned were exposed, and that's why it went to extra time. But I think we can't ignore the positives of the way we approached the game, which is good. Another positive sign of Nuno's coaching, I think.
Yeah, it was really noticeable first half, wasn't it, Pete? Murillo got on the ball a lot with Tavares. They played a lot down the left, and Yates and Mangala especially. That's why I thought he was good. They moved the ball a lot quicker through midfield compared to that first 30 minutes of the first leg, didn't they?
Absolutely. I was going to echo Mark's comments there. I mean, at half time, I was again being complacent, sort of preparing to come on here and feel and talk really positively about the way that we went into the game, particularly from the sort of mental side of things as well. I think, I mean, it's not a given that a Premier League team turns up to a game like that and actually does show that sort of intensity. And I mean, it's awkward, isn't it? It's going away to Blackpool midweek. Iffy pitch. It's absolutely freezing. They've sort of got all the ingredients to be one of those nights where you just say, "Oh, they're just not really turned up." But credit to them, they really did. It's just, as Mark says, a shame that the way it went from there. But I do think I agree with Mark totally that they deserve credit for the way they went about it. And like you said, I think the intent was there as well with the ball and with pressing as well. I mean, it helps when you've got. Sorry, go on.
Oh no! What I was going to say was, and this is a populist, easy one to say, but and the fans as well, Pete. It was, our fans made a difference, and it was frigging freezing. Greg sent a photo of him; you could barely see his face in it. So it was probably like that for everyone. So yeah, well done to them as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, our fans, particularly away from home. I mean, at home in the last couple of years as well, but away from home, they never cease to amaze me. To be honest, the noise they make, the enthusiasm with which they go to games, especially when times are pretty grim. Sometimes with Forest, and today I dread to think the state of their limbs and fingers and toes in that freezing cold up there for so long. The game felt like it went on forever. So yeah, kudos to all of them, and I guess the players and the staff should thank them for helping drag them through that one in the end.
Yeah, and I think I saw on Twitter that fan who was taken ill is all right. I hope that's the case. But yeah, we'll keep tabs on that tomorrow when we're back tomorrow. But I think that's the case. Let me throw this an interesting question at you, Mark, because you'll have seen plenty of Brentford from Matt Cain. I mean, I'm panicked about the Brentford game now because of our injury situation, and Tony's back. Matt's got a different spin on it about they've lost the last 5 games, is true. Tony's barely played. Visser and Mbuma are out at AFCON or injured, and he's pretty chilled about it. Is that more the attitude we should have than my abject fear going into Saturday now?
I think if we had Bolly and Niakate, or we had a fit Felipe, I'll be very confident we get something out of the game. I think the problem is that frailty we saw. Blackpool expose us. Blackpool weren't that effective at it, throwing balls in the box when they brought on the big centre forward and he scored the goal. Tony, the question is how match fit is he going to be? He's obviously been playing behind closed doors games, but he won't have played anything with the intensity of a Premier League game, I wouldn't imagine. So we've got to hope that he's not fully fit and won't play 90 minutes or won't be effective over 90 minutes. But it's just set pieces for me. I mean, even the throw-ins tonight, we looked vulnerable, and they didn't really have a long throw exponent, really. They didn't have anyone who was slinging it in near Kate style. Brentford will find someone. They'll be training that now, probably. So that's the problem. Thomas Frank's going to look at that game tonight, and he's going to go, thanks so much for showing me exactly how we beat Forest on Saturday. That'll be to play for set pieces, play for long throws, and get our centre-backs and Tony right on the keeper. And let's face it, if they do that, we're not going to fancy it, are we? Because we're not going to have 2 first-choice centre-backs, and our keeper goes missing when there's any kind of physical harm or risk of physical harm, really, wherever it is, whether it's Turner or Vladic. So I worry for that reason. Quality-wise, I think our 11 would be better than theirs, right? Especially if Gibbs-White is fit. So I agree with some of what's been said there, but I just worry about our frailties and how well-equipped Brentford will be to expose that.
Ian, who is in Canada, the weather over that part of the world is horrific. Says it's minus 15, with minus 25 wind chill here. So I imagine he watched the game indoors. Certainly, I did see some Blackpool youths, Stone Island youths, behind the goal with no coats on, full tracksuit, absolutely idiots. But yeah, should focus a bit more on this game. But going into Brentford, Pete, if it is Omobamidele and Murillo as a pair, can you see that working then in the Premier League? Because they're both good on the ball, but like Mark says, aerially, they do look a little bit frail as a unit, do they?
I'd say so. I mean, I think if that is the way we go, they're fit and they play, then the only way I think we win that game is if we go out with like very serious intent, look to dominate and to ultimately create and score more than they can from whatever set pieces they get. But it feels a bit gung ho, and it would worry me for all of the reasons that Mark said. I mean, I'd be pretty tempted at this point if McKenna is available and not barred from selection for whatever reason to play him, to be honest, because I think it would make a difference.
Yeah, I do wonder though, Mark, if attack might be the best form of defence because they're in such a sticky run of form themselves. I mean, there is like a modicum of pressure on Frank building, I guess. If we can go there and start positively, then is getting at them early maybe the best way to go at it.
Yeah, and I do hope that Gibbs-White is fit. I mean, if Steve Cooper was a manager, you'd be saying, "Oh yeah, he's fit," because that's Cooper, isn't it? Press conferences, but maybe Nuno's take a leaf out of his book, and there is a bit of housery here going on. But I hope so, and I think there's a chance there is. I think if Gibbs-White's on the pitch, he can be a real problem for them. I think if he was on the pitch tonight, he'd have found space in the pockets, and we would have won that game more comfortably. So it's crucial whether he's fit or not, and that will probably dictate whether we go out on the front foot. What we saw at Newcastle was that Nuno is not going to go there and put out a side that's going to be meek, and they are going to be confident they can cause problems. And I think it's apart from the aerial threat, it's a very even contest. And arguably, if Gibbs-White's fit, we've got match winners on the pitch. And it really then depends if Tony's going to be as effective as he was last season, which is doubtful. I don't think we're going to see even Tony hit the ground running straight away, but even a half-fit Tony could cause us problems after what we saw tonight. That's the issue.
Who was it who said those lads would take my dinner money? TC, yeah, they would. I'm not going to argue with that. Hang on, there's some random question. I should focus on the other ones. Are they TVs at the back of Mark? Are they TVs behind you?
The TVs? What, the big black things?
The three black things.
No, they're it's sound absorption to make sure that the sound's kind of good here. It's like a treated room, basically. It's yeah.
It's a professional setup.
It's a studio, yeah. No, I do it properly. Yeah, well, I've done it. Yeah, yeah. No spare room like Pratt's. Yeah, that was no, it's proper.
Phil says attack will always be the best form of defence, which it might be actually. Like Mark says, that Nuno way of playing. James about Danilo, we touched on him a bit. Pete doesn't look anywhere near as good as he was last season. It was quite a concentrated burst last season where he played really well. Where's he at now, do you think, in terms of his performances this season?
I think it's an interesting question around him. I guess the problem we sometimes have as fans of a club is we have a natural bias towards things being good. We obviously want to see them in a good light, and that burst of Danilo's form towards the end of last season, I sort of instinctively thought, well, this is what he is now. That's the player he is. That's the player we can expect, and that's going to be his level. But it may be that's his potential, and that he's going to be inconsistent for now, but that's not necessarily his level. I'm not too sure. I mean, I think he has had little issues around fitness. He's not had sort of brilliant runs of time in the team. He's obviously been sort of first pick for Nuno since he came in, and he's playing a very different role at the moment as well. I mean, another different role tonight, I guess, as a sort of more of a genuine 8 rather than who's been playing as a 6 under Nuno so far. But his success for us was when we were playing that box, and he was as a sort of one of 2 twirling 10s, I guess, almost sort of certainly high 8s, and he was really sort of doing a lot of work in the opposition half and towards the final third. And it's sort of a very different game he's playing for us now, with a lot of the game in front of him. He's being asked to do a lot more defensive work, and sometimes he does look a little bit lightweight. I think he's brushed off the ball a bit easily. Sometimes there's sort of an element of chaos to the way that he plays. I'm not sure his decision making isn't necessarily that good at the moment, but he is young, and obviously those things are much more easily forgiven further up the pitch. I'm not worried about him. I think he needs time in the team. I'm not convinced personally that he's going to be a deep midfielder anytime soon over here. But maybe in the long term he will be. But I think there's a lot of sort of work on decision making and some of the sort of slightly more basic elements of the game to do before he's that. But he's still clearly got the capability to be explosive and dynamic. I don't think he's quite there at the moment, but hopefully with a run of games he'll get back to that.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Someone said this is all doom and gloom. So are we going to win the FA Cup, Mark?
Yeah, well, you know what? You often see it, don't you? Sides that kind of stumble their way through round upon round and don't look as though they're up for the cup at all, or don't stroll through opposition. They're the ones who kind of scrape through to the semi-finals, get a good draw, and then suddenly you're at Wembley. So who knows? I mean, I think we haven't been very fortunate at cup draws in past years. So we only need a bit of that. And Bristol City won't be easy. I mean, that's another scenario where we could easily turn up and not fancy it. But I think the positive to draw from tonight is I don't think we will go to City and have that mentality. I think we will go there and go, no, we want to win. We're a better team than this lot. We're going to impose ourselves and get a couple of goals and win. And I think hopefully we've got a few players back from injury or even from AFCON by then. So yeah, I'm optimistic. A little cup run will be a nice distraction in a way that hopefully it keeps us the momentum going if we can keep results rolling. But obviously the league is paramount, right? That's where we want our performances. That's where we want our wins. And so the cup will be an added bonus to staying up really for us.
What about you, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably giving off the impression that it's all doom and gloom just because tonight's been a fairly sort of stressful evening, particularly when it comes to players being, well, not being stretched off, but hobbling off the pitch. And there's a long list of them, and we sort of don't really know where we are with that at the moment. But actually, I'm pretty optimistic about things, aside from the sort of worries over the depth of the squad given AFCON and the injuries. I think Nuno's come in and made a very big difference to the way that we're going about games. We're playing with real intent. We look like we want to try and win every game that we play first before thinking about how to suppress the opposition and staying in games and such like. I think that's positive, and I think it probably suits quite a lot of our players. I'm hopeful that the Gibbs-White situation is a bit of a sort of phantom one, and the run of form that he's finding is brilliant, and I think he could be absolutely electric as the season progresses. So I'm pretty optimistic, to be honest. It's probably just come across as a bit of doom and gloom because tonight's been difficult and long, and we're sort of a bit concerned about what we're going to be left with in the squad tomorrow morning. But fingers crossed.
Yeah, I echo what you're saying there. I think, sorry, man. I think that what I've seen from Nuno so far tells me that when we are back to full strength and perhaps with a little bit more quality on the pitch coming in January, we don't know if that's going to be the case. I think we've got every reason to be optimistic about the final quarter of the season, because I think just the difference in mentality when we're taken to the pitch now is that we can win this game no matter who the opposition is. Whereas I think under Steve Cooper, I don't want to be too critical. I think too often we approach games with, it's all about containing the opponent and then trying to catch them on a break, but we never really committed enough players forward to make out of those opportunities when we did break. Whereas with Nuno, we've already seen not only do we have a more positive approach to a game, but also when we do have possession and break, we break in numbers and with intent. So when we've got a full strength side out, I think that will cause problems, particularly with Taiwo and Alanga fit again. So there's plenty to look forward to. And if we can keep the cup run going, who knows? So yeah, I think Pete's right. It's just because we've been through the mill again tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've got optimism going forwards. I mean, a lot of our team I like. Montiel looks good. Nico's done well again tonight. Ola Aina is probably our best left back, but I don't know if Nuno doesn't fancy Toffolo or not. But yeah, he'd done well before that. And then in midfield, I like the balance. I hope Mangala doesn't go unless we need to sell him, because I think he makes a difference. It's someone who takes the ball off the back too, unless that's going to be Sangare. I like that. And a lot of my optimism for Saturday hinges around if we can actually get Gibbs-White on the pitch. Because if it is like as Peter, one of those phantom injuries that we've seen with Gibbs-White, then I do fancy us to go there and do well. Because Brentford are, pretty fallible themselves at the moment. So we'll see how it goes. There were positives and there were negatives tonight, but that's certainly, the Forest way. Probably a good note to end on because it's like 11:15 and people want to go to bed to get up for work in the morning. Any final words before we depart, Pete?
Just while we're on the sort of slightly more amusing or positive side of things, I enjoyed Ian Holloway praising the Oyston family before the game. That made me amused as to what on earth he's going to face when he gets home and opens his laptop. And also Murillo smashing the ball into the crowd and getting a very warm Blackpool welcome was a nice moment. And just last thing, just a shout out to Duncan Cobbett in the comments, who has very kindly referenced me as being a good keeper in my youth. I don't know if he's trying to be my agent, but if Nuno needs a hand, then give me a shout.
Yeah. Is it too late, Pete? Can you do it? Can you still do it?
Well, I'll be doing it at Forest Rec tomorrow night in -2 or whatever it is, so you can come and watch and see what he thinks.
I said I'd give a shout out to all the fans in North America for someone who messaged on Instagram who I've forgotten the name of, sorry, but I know, yeah, it's cold here. It's even colder there in the Midwest, I think, at the moment. So hello to all them. I think that's it from me. Anything from you, Mark, before we go?
I just want to give a shout out to the referee. I thought he was really good tonight. I mean, there was a few incidents that I thought he got right. The Murillo penalty shout, he was absolutely spot on. Murillo did get a touch on the ball. There was obviously no VAR. He didn't need it. I thought he was excellent. And I'll tell you what, there's a few Premier League refs I've swapped him with in a heartbeat for what I saw tonight. So I don't know who he was, but shout out to the ref, and a reminder that there are good officials out there at different levels. And you know, we've gone through a bit of agony this season with some bad decisions made against us in the Premier League. So, but tonight I thought he refereed the game with control, gave bookings where it was needed, and let the game flow. And he made the right decisions when it mattered. So, shout out to him for once. There we go.
I'll Google. If anyone knows who it was, put it in the comments. Now people are just giving weather reports. So Pat says it's freezing in America. Chris Botherway, who lives in Sydney, says it's 28 degrees. Also, was it 27? Yeah, well, lucky Bothers who gets to live in Sydney and work for the Sydney Sixers, I think. I can't remember. Yeah, I'm filling time. Someone put the ref's name in the comment. Darren Bond. There you go. Is he a Premier League ref? He's not, is he?
He is. No, he should be after tonight. I'll tell you what.
All right, well, here's a question. Was he better because there was no VAR? I don't know how that would work, but was that a factor, Mark?
I don't know. I thought the game could have got pretty tasty at times. I think he controlled it pretty well. I don't remember making a decision and rolling my eyes, let alone swearing at the TV. So for me, that's a good referee performance because I didn't really notice him. And how many games this season have we ended going, oh, there wasn't something to moan about the refs? That's one of few, I would say.
And as Boynesy says in the comments, any game is better with no VAR. Was that a thing, Pete? I mean, I didn't really notice it, but now people say it. You know, it was nice to watch a game without the headache of VAR all the time.
Oh, I absolutely love being without it. I think I'm one of the few people who didn't want it before it came, and I've sort of stuck with that, and it's ruining my experience at Forest games. But so it was nice. I mean, I don't recall any instance where it would have definitely been used. I don't know if there was a question of Yates being offside. For our goal, I sort of paused the game to have a look along the line, but I couldn't really tell from the camera angle. But yeah, it was nice.
I think that's what they do in Stockley Park, isn't it?
Yeah, they'd have definitely spent 15 minutes examining the Marino challenge, and we wouldn't have been on air till about 20 minutes ago if there was VAR.
True. Right. I think we'll leave it there. I said that to these lads, we'll do 20 or 30 minutes max, and we've almost done 45, and it's 20 past 7. And Pete's got a little kid who's probably going to. What time do you wake up at normally, Pete?
Well, he's ill at the moment, so it could be any time now.
Oh, you're a good man for doing this. Mark's kids are a bit older, so they probably sleep till about. Well, you have to drag them out of bed for school, I guess, do you?
Yeah, yeah, they'll be all right. They'll be all right in the morning. But yeah, it's good. I mean, I think after watching that game, I was keen to get on and talk Forest. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to Saturday, and I just hope that we can patch the team up and get Gibbs-White on the pitch and give it a real good go, and hope that the stats I'm looking at the moment, which I'm not going to give you because it'll just scare you, don't come true, and for some reason we don't give away too many set pieces.
Yeah, hopefully so. Let's hope we're talking about a win. Right, just quickly, if you have liked this, do us a favour, hit like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Over 700 plus people with us this late at night, which is fantastic. So I appreciate the support as ever. Back, do it all again at 10 a.m. in the morning with Greg and Emily. So we'll unpack a bit more of this game. We'll talk about transfer stuff around reports that we're going to have like a net zero policy, and we're not going to sign a goalkeeper, so we'll expand on that and a couple of other things as well, no doubt. So do join us for that if you can at 10 a.m. Mark, thanks very much for your company as ever.
Thanks, Matt. Pleasure.
Pete, good to have you with us again 2 days in a row. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Matt.
Have a good evening, everyone, and hopefully we shall see you tomorrow.